The whole system began to collapse on October 29, 1929. When stock prices declined, brokers began to call in their loans. When the investors couldn't pay because they didn't have the money, the stockbrokers were forced to sell the stocks. Stocks dumped on the market drove prices further down. Within a few weeks, stocks lost half their value. General Electric plunged from $396 to $34 a share. U.S. Steel from $261 to $21. Businesses declared bankruptcy in droves. Unemployment soared. In Cleveland, Ohio, half the able-bodied men were unemployed. In Akron, 60%. In Toledo, 80%. Across America, millions of jobless men, or hobos, took to the roads. As incomes plunged, families were evicted from their homes. They shivered in tents and cooked over wood fires.
During the Depression, there was very little money, and as far as jobs were concerned, a lot of firms had permanent signs that said no help wanted. I remember riding on the trolley car. There was this big long line of men that must have been 3 blocks long, waiting for food. Even though I was quite young, it struck me as being sad, a very sad situation.
Dear Mr. Hoover, could we not have employment and food to eat? Our children have schoolless days and shoeless days, while banks are bursting with money. Why are we reduced to poverty and starving and anxiety? Why not end the Depression? Have you not a heart? I am an ignorant man, and you are supposed to have great brains.
Americans had every reason to believe that the new president, Herbert Hoover, could pull them out of the Depression. During World War I, Hoover headed the U.S. Food Administration, supervising the relief effort for war-torn Europe. And as Coolidge's Secretary of Commerce, he helped American businesses expand overseas. When the Great Depression struck, Hoover tried the traditional remedies for ending recessions. He won a promise from business leaders to keep wages steady. He organized committees of volunteers to collect charity and encouraged local governments to provide more relief for the poor.
Hoover was a very, very activist president for that time. He didn't help end the Depression to any extent, but he was trying. The main problem is twofold. One is that nobody knows how to cure the Depression. People are stumbling around trying to figure out how to get the economy to work. And two, Hoover himself, in terms of public opinion, in terms of his use of the media, was an absolute disaster.
Despite Hoover's cheerleading, the Depression worsened. Businesses continued to cut jobs and wages. Teetering on the verge of bankruptcy, local governments slashed their relief rolls. And Herbert Hoover, who had called for jokes to raise the nation's spirits, became the butt of one himself.
He just doesn't get it. He just doesn't know how to convince the American people that he's on their side, that he's trying to solve their problems, that he wants the Depression to end. On the contrary, he comes off as someone who doesn't care about them.
Across the United States, makeshift communities of boxes and tin shacks became known as Hoovervilles. An empty pocket turned outwards was a Hoover flag. A newspaper covering a sleeping hobo was a Hoover blanket. But humor could not mask the deep reservoir of frustration that welled up across the country. Bitter strikes rocked the nation. When unarmed workers marched on Ford's River Rouge car plant, the company's police guards opened fire. 5 days of fighting left 4 people dead and 50 injured. The outlook for the nation's farmers was just as gloomy. As prices plummeted, farmers could not make mortgage payments or even get their crops to market. So while people starved in the cities, farmers dumped milk on the highways in California and burned corn for warmth in Nebraska. Hoover helped some Americans get back to work by setting up public works programs.
The one thing he didn't want to do was to spend government money to actually help people. He believed really in a more trickle-down philosophy, that you help the people at the top first and that will work. But nothing he tried really worked.
Hoover did establish the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, which lent federal money to struggling banks, insurance companies, and railroads to stimulate the economy. He also set up public works programs to provide jobs for American workers. Still, his efforts had little effect.